Okay, this is the Advanced Teaching and Assessment, Lesson Plan Section 1 through 3, uh, presentations by myself, Billy Reed. First, let's look at the overall. Here's page 1 and 2 of the lesson plan with sections 1 through 3. We're going to look more closely at each one of these sections. Section 1, start off with the Common Core State Standard, RL 9-10.3, the key ideas and details, analyzing how complex characters, specifically those with multiple or conflicting motivations, develop over the course of the text, interact with the characters, and advance the plot or develop the theme. What is my objectives for the student learning for this lesson? The student will be able to identify the main characters in George Orwell's novella Animal Farm. The student will be able to define the protagonist and antagonist and describe the character who identifies with each role within the work. The student will also describe how the antagonist develops in chapters 1 through 5. Specifically, we're looking at, the reason I broke it down to 1 through 5 is because one of the main antagonists in the work is removed from the novella at that time. Basically, the character dies. So the main antagonist swaps. So we're going to break it down, look at chapters 1 through 5, and then look at the chapter 6 to the end, like that. Why have you chosen this objective? I've chosen this objective because it's part of the Common Core State Standard for this grade level. Additionally, this objective provides me with a baseline in which to evaluate my students' level of comprehension of the text as it has been presented to them. I think it's important to use something that is not too complex when I start. That way I can see where the students are at, especially being that it'll be my first year with the students, and see what they're capable of, how fast they learn, and what they already know. Mastery of this objective will ensure that the students form a deeper understanding of the contextual meanings within the work, thus allowing me to introduce additional skills later, such as identifying themes, motives, symbolism, and irony. Now number 2, student grouping. How will you form students into groups for instruction? I'll begin the lesson with a whole group instructional period. I like lecturing. Lecturing is a good way for me to present the data or the information to the students. After completing the explanation portion of the class, I will separate the students into small person groups according to the number of characters identifying the work. I want to keep these groups small because it's easier for me to make sure that one student's not doing the majority of the work and allowing the other students to just sort of coast by. So it's important to try to keep these groups small. That's why I want to identify different novels and things like that have a large number of characters. That way we can break them off into smaller groups. Each group will be assigned to complete a description of the assigned character, identifying the character roles within the work, and explain if and how the character develops within the work as the plot advances. I will then bring the groups back together, and each group will explain and discuss their analysis of the characters. I will then assign each student to pick up either the protagonist or antagonist and one additional character to complete a one-page essay regarding those characters' development throughout the work. This will enable me to properly evaluate each student's understanding of the objective as stated above. Why have I chosen this grouping? I've chosen this method because it allows me to begin by providing a clear description of the analytical technique that will be used prior to asking the students to perform the task. As I said before, I like to get all the information out there up front and allow the students time to process it before we start working on some kind of tasking. The student is then placed in a small group to practice the skill with the support of his or her peers, thus building confidence through teamwork. By asking the students to report back, they understand that they are expected to not only accomplish the task, but to do so at a level that is acceptable to the entire class. Finally, by tasking the student an individual assignment, this allows them to choose a portion. While allowing them to choose a portion of the subject matter, I can evaluate the student's understanding of the subject matter and their ability to clearly articulate what they have learned, while simultaneously evaluating the student's motivation to accomplish a task by the decision on which character they analyze. I do this to see if they're going to pick a character that has a very small role in the novel, or they're going to challenge themselves and pick a secondary character that still has a significant role in the overall work. This will tell me if they're self-motivated or not, and that way I can concentrate on those students that may not be as self-motivated and try to boost their motivation. Section 3, Methods and Instructional Strategies. What teaching method will you use for this lesson? For this lesson, I will begin with a lecture and a question and answer. I will then break up the students into a small group or where they can perform the activity, where the groups will be required to report back to the classroom. I will complete the lesson with an individual assignment for the evaluation as I previously stated. Why have you chosen this method or these methods? The lecture method allows me again to clearly present the materials to the students directly. The question and answer portion after each section of the lecture allows students who are unclear to revisit these portions of the lecture that they did not initially understand while simultaneously reinforcing the information to the rest of the class. Repetition to me is a good thing. The more you repeat something, the more it becomes ingrained and it becomes less of a memorized thing and more of a learned thing. The small group portion of the class enables the students to work as a team on problem solving and allows me to work with the students on a more individual basis as I move around the classroom observing. Again, I like this technique before I get more one-on-one time with the students. I believe it's really important. They see me as a person, not just as a talking parrot up at the front of the class. Reporting back to the classroom allows the other students to receive different viewpoints on the information as well as reinforcing the knowledge of the student that they've already acquired. The individual assignment will allow me to evaluate each student's mastery of the objective. Now, I'll follow up with a test after all this, but that's later on. When I go through a novel, I want to reinforce and I want to make sure every student understands all the different aspects of the novel and are able to look at it and analyze it from several different ways. This concludes my presentation for the sections 1 through 3 of the lesson plan.